Guys, what is going on? What is going on? Obviously, you could see browsing a little bit of the some homes and looking at some mortgage payoff calculators. Kind of separate from our software engineering journey, but the idea is obviously land another position. I've been doing a lot of interviews, tech interviews, working on the side project, kind of getting somewhat put in a position where I think something's going to line up with one of these companies I'm talking with or working for currently. And the idea is obviously maintain a healthy salary, and obviously some sort of large income, right, from multiple different streams, whether it's my music catalog, whether it's from the software engineering course, whether it's from investments or crypto nodes or anything like this. The idea is I want to make an outsized amount of money, like have a ridiculous level of monthly income, but then I really want to live off of like none of it, like such a small amount of it, right? Where we'll just throw like a salary range out there. Actually, we can just look at levels.fyi. So this is kind of your software engineering go-to place to explore salaries that people can post their salaries. If you work at like Google, you can kind of see what other software engineers are roughly paid in your bracket. And obviously these are like some of the best packages you can get. However, a lot of startups and companies who are doing well, who are just like maybe right below the FANG tier, they still roughly model these. These aren't unheard of packages if you work at some of these other companies even. So you can see very quickly even entry level positions or earlier level positions, you can put yourself in a really, really awesome position. And the golden rule with housing is you want to buy a house that's no more than 3 times your yearly salary. So if your yearly salary is, let's say, $170,000, you want something no more than $500,000, or if you're $140,000 salary, you want something that's, in your 390 to 420 range, right? So that's just following like, good budget. However, my thought process is, let's say you can maintain a $200,000 a year salary or something like that, or $200,000 a year income from one way or another, whether it's from your main income source, whether you do side projects, whether you do, sell a couple things on the weekend, however you do it. Let's say you earn whatever the number may be. If it's $150,000, right? Let's see, mortgage payoff calculator. Traditionally, if you, let's say if you make $150,000 and you can afford a home, that's $450,000, right? And we'll just give a date here. Say 2024, and you have your normal traditional loan at, we'll say current mortgage rate's roughly 8%, right? You're going to take all 30 years to pay off this loan for $450,000. And you wouldn't be done till 2054, right? It gives you a breakdown of roughly what your payments would look like. I think there's more information if we break it open like this. Or you can at least do a mortgage calculator and see roughly what the monthly payment would be. Roughly $3,500, right? And then you have other expenses on top of that, your utilities, maybe maintenance. So you're looking at about $4,000 a month to afford a $450,000 home or condo or townhome. The idea is then, what if you don't go for a $450,000 home? What if you go for like, let's say a $300,000 home, right? Like something a lot more in your range. If you're making, let's say, this salary, right? If you have a $300,000 home and this is your cash salary, I wouldn't account for stock because you don't want to lean on that necessarily, but you can obviously use that as like bonus or even your bonus. You can use it as bonus or additional income at that point, but you should always just look at the base salary, right? The cash, at least initially for kind of these hard costs. And if you have a $300,000 home and you're making, let's say, $200,000 a year, well, just on back of the napkin math, you can rapidly see, okay, I don't, you don't need to maintain a mortgage for very long. So boom, here's your normal payoff date, 2054, and any additional payments, let's say again you're making $200,000 a year, well, after taxes that's $12,000 a month, maybe $13,000 a month, right? So if you have $3,000 that has to go to your mortgage roughly after payments and utilities, you now have $10 additional $1,000 every month that you could throw towards your mortgage. Realistically, most people won't. You're going to spend a little on other things. But $8,000 is somewhat realistic. Boom. Now all of a sudden, instead of taking 30 years to pay off your home, you would do it in 2.5 years or 3 years, right? So that's those are the ideas. And then again, if you have additional income, let's say you do end up doing well with the stock options on a salary like this, or a salary like this or something. Let's say the stock options do actually come through, or the bonus does work well. Let's say you have additional income from other channels or other revenue streams, right? That's just more money you can add to this extra payment amount. And you could literally knock down, right, a home or a condo or something sizable, like still a decent home for $300,000 or $400,000 in a really short amount of time. So that's kind of where my head's just naturally gravitating at, because currently I live in an apartment, and I've lived in apartments for quite some time, and it just feels a little dirty. It's really lightweight. You can move around. You can leave something behind pretty quick. If you need to break a lease, it's a couple grand out the door. But it's this feeling after that it makes me wonder, like, if I'm paying, let's call it $2,000 or $2,000 out the door every month for an apartment, by the time you pay for your utilities, your insurances, all those things, you don't have very much to show for when you leave. So, but the trade-off is you do have that lightweight flexibility, and you actually get to afford more luxury for that same price range. Because a home that you'd pay for $2,000 a month, you're definitely going to get less quote unquote luxury, or less, like you can get in a gated nice apartment for $2,000 a month. You certainly can, in most places in the world. But anyway, so that's neither here nor there, but just some thoughts. And let's get back to what we were doing last episode. So this is episode 28. I had to cut off last episode a little bit rapidly. I had a meeting with a company that I am rebuilding their front end for. So I actually had a last minute really pop off really quick, and we have just tiny things. We're getting ready for the handoff, but there's a lot of me and my business partner, we're getting ready for the handoff, but there's a lot of like tiny tweaks and just small details that they need for business operations that we need to get right before obviously doing the handoff. So that's kind of where we're at now. That's kind of what we're focused on now. So I did have to kind of rapidly end yesterday's meeting, or yesterday's episode. But let's pop back into today's episode. We worked on this add new column functionality, and from what I remember, it was working great. We just need to polish it off and kind of, kind of think about it in a way where it makes sense. And I'm thinking something like a modal here, or something where this will be like a plus icon. And this plus icon even, when we click it, it should pop up with a new modal, right? And just be like, hey, what column do you want? What categories maybe belong to this column? But basically, we tested the functionality yesterday that this thing does work, in fact. So we can say new column, right? Boom, add new column, and it works. So that was important for us to test yesterday. The thing that we want to consider and look at today is going to be more of a larger scope, where these things, the to-do column, the in-progress column, the done column, and now the new column, this is all a piece of data or memory that we need to hold on to for each user, because we need to populate it here. In addition to that, we need to maintain it. So right now, these things are just kind of hard-coded here, where we can change them and it'll update this, right? But we need it to be a piece of data so we can put it in our other components as well. So like this create task component, we need a way to now post to our new column, whatever the new column may be. So I hope this is large enough. I've zoomed in a little bit more. I had another comment of someone kindly asking if we could zoom in, or if I could zoom in just a little bit more, so they could see. So I'm trying to do that. It's sometimes hard to develop because I'm developing on this like ginormous 32-inch monitor. And then I've got a vertical monitor to the left that's orientated this way, and then my what's it called, my laptop in front of me. So I've got 3 screens, which is just amazing, right? It's perfect. My laptop can kind of be like the operations, right? The behind the scenes, the console, the Chat GPT. Over here, typically right now I have it all on one screen, but typically I put my code actually on the vertical monitor. Right now I just have the recording software and I'll put other things over there like the UI or something like that. And then here, obviously you guys see the screen. So, but I would like one day to maybe show the whole setup and kind of the flow of how I do things, because it's a good flow. I feel like I get a lot done. Let me put this instrumental into the headphones and let's get to rolling, folks. So, God, I really love development. I think it's such an interesting thing because it allows for me to be creative. It allows for me to be analytical and technical. And then it's this interesting space that people, when they don't understand it themselves, they look at it like with esteem. Like, oh, you're a software engineer. That's awesome. Like tell me more about it. What does that mean? So I really do enjoy development for some of those reasons. I think it's really a fun space. So, okay, what I'm thinking now is I want to pull in the base modal here at this point. And let's see. I want to pop it in here. Boom. And I believe we set it up where we can pass in children. I forgot how we're using the base modal. Okay, we're passing in content and then button, and then we're choosing a button. Okay. So button chose and the content. And I remember this is roughly how we want to do it. Const modal content. I'll say add column modal content to be just a little bit more specific. And here I will return all of our JSX that we have made down below. Just all of this stuff right here. Okay, boom, and that'll end up being inside of our modal. And we'll say content equals this, boom, add modal content. And we need to choose a button. We'll need to develop one inside the base modal. So maybe we could pop over and do that. We have button shows. I could say delete task. Unless there's one that's just add column or something. Nope, we don't have that. And again, the reason why we kind of have this longer syntax instead of passing in a button is we had some issues, and there's actually still an issue with rendering the template within another template. So when I have the delete modal on top of this modal, there's still an issue there. So So we will have to dive back into that at some point, but those are kind of like smaller warnings, and I'm not terribly concerned about them. Let's see, background red, add column. Let's see if this pops up somewhere. Here, no, not seeing it, guys. Not seeing it. It was so awesome too at the meeting yesterday, because I take a lot of meetings and calls and stuff with this setup as well, with the headphones and the Zoom setup, if you call it. I take the, oh, here we go, boom, popped up. And people there, they kept saying, you got such a nice voice, like you should do a podcast, you should do something, you got such a smooth voice. I felt so flattered. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are the best. You guys are the best. And then I had to show them. I had to show them the channel. I was like, funny that you say that, because I kind of do have this long form content that I just talk on and build, you know. So it was cool. It was fun. Okay, so let's get this button dialed properly. Right now I'm just kind of coloring it up. Just putting a simple add column deal. Let's see, add column, and we want this column to, or this button rather, to actually exist. Not here, but in the middle, right? We don't want it at the top. We want it down here where you can kind of see it as like an add column thing. We may even want it to be more sleek than just saying add column. We might even want to do some sort of just like plus type icon that we end up putting there. Right now, I know that's just kind of a hard-coded plus, but it's going to get the job done for right now. So maybe we'll leave it as add column just as a thing, and same with add task. Maybe there's going to be a day when we kind of streamline these things and do just, you know, a little bit of work to make them look a little prettier, like make a plus icon or something like that. So add new column. Great, it still works. Awesome. So let's let's think about other things we need to. We're also going to need the functionality now to delete a column. So we have the button working, right? It looks like, and I know it's a sloppy modal, but functionality is key. That's the most important thing first, right? I've had to learn that. Well, how do I put it? I kind of have two approaches on it, because on one hand, I'm like, well, functionality is super important, but on the other hand, I'm like, well, I don't want to work on stuff that looks ugly and it's like clunky and tacky. So I used to really focus on the front end very dominantly and do the tiniest of details first, of, you know, making sure all my gradients were proper, all the hover states were the same, and all these things that kind of are based around, let's say, CSS, like really precise CSS, and doing cool stuff. But I stopped doing that after working at after Babson, especially because I realized how much stuff can change, and you have to be really adaptive. You have to be able to kind of rapidly prototype, and sometimes it's changing in complete data schemas and complete structures of how you're building something. So all that hard work that you do with CSS and stuff could just get thrown out the window sometimes pretty quick. So I'm kind of iffy on it. I'm like, build it where it's pretty enough where I can look at it and it's not horribly ugly, but then get to the functionality, because if it doesn't work and it looks pretty, it's no good. You know what I mean? I guess it's better than, to some degree, I would still almost have that than it just looking horrible. I guess that's how you know I'm a front-end engineer, right? Or at least dominantly a front-end engineer, but, or I should say front-end dominant rather. But yeah, I've always I don't know. I guess I'm coming to the dark side, if you will, to the back end development a little more, right? Where I'm starting to see, okay, the functionality is a little more important, the data is a little more important, these type generated contracts, all these like under the hood things are really important to get down, these atomic functions and more. So yeah, it's been a fun journey. It really has been. It really has been a fun journey. But let's speaking of Prisma and building these backend stuff and going to the dark side, I'll call it, right? We're gonna need to model some of these. What are they called? Task columns. So I know we're gonna need a task column ID. Just I think the object just needs to be identified. We're gonna need task column name. Task column name. Boom. It's almost like it's listening to me. Task column name. Okay, and then is that all? Is that all we need? Because the tasks themselves will be able to. I think that's it. I think that's it. Right? So let's npx run generate, right? Npx Prisma generate. Just to update the contract, make sure we have a place in our database to store these things. I'll pull open MongoDB, trusty old document storage. And let's open the Taskify shtick that we are building in. Go ahead and adjust this. And basically we want to get our task columns here. So let's think about how we need to do this. We're going to need operations around this, and let me close all of our folders. Let's think about it. So we have our API, right? We have tasks. And what are we getting here? Well, ask me later on that. We'll update that in a moment. But let's take a beat. Let's think about this. So we have our task in our task store and all of our task endpoints, right? And they're doing all of our CRUD operations, deleting task statuses. There's an atomic thing. We handled the reactivity yesterday, I believe. Let's see. So I could pop this back over to do. It should work. Or did we not handle that? Oh, that's right. We didn't finalize that, and then we popped over to this new column feature. So let's not deal with the reactivity today either. That might be something I want to do behind the scenes, because it seems like it was such a simple issue that we almost figured out yesterday in the last episode, but just didn't for whichever reason. Again, I know the easy approach would be just to pass the data down from the page and then into the components. But the tricky thing that I'm trying to do is make these components completely self-contained. So again, if we have like role-based authentication or role-based navigation or something, meaning if I log in and I'm an admin, or if I log in and I'm a patient, or excuse me, a user, or if I log in and I'm like a free user versus like a premium user, maybe we're going to have different functionalities on different pages. Maybe we're going to have more features depending on who's looking at what, right? So maybe there's a paid version where you're allowed to have different columns. Maybe there's a paid version where you can build your own pages or something. And I want those components within whatever page we place and plop them in. They're completely self-contained. They're their own, like I mentioned with the percentage component, right, on the dashboard. So we have our project and percentage component. Let me show you guys just a quick demo of this. Let's go to our dashboard page. So we can look at our base project percentage. That's what the component's called. If we want to use this now on the Kanban page, it's as easy as just coming over to the Kanban page, or it should be as easy. Let me preface it. It should be as easy as just popping it in here. So base project percentage. Looks like we named it this, and then boom. And it should be as easy as literally saying, okay, well, let's just pop it at the top of the thing, and boom, it should be in here. Obviously having a bit of an issue here. So let's refresh the page. Let's see. What did we do? What did we break? Why would this not work? Base project percentage. I feel like it should be working, right? We should at least see. Let me say here. Well, in theory, it should have worked in complete transparency, but we're obviously getting a bug here for some reason. Let's see if we're at the right folder, base project percentage. Let's try another maybe. Import base test table. Well, this was supposed to be the theory of how they work. Is boom, we have active task. We can just pop in the task table wherever we want it, right? I don't know why the project percentage isn't working on this. Maybe it has something to do with the client side component or something, but maybe this is an opportunity to look into that. But the idea is we can do this, right? So if we needed this base task table anywhere else in the project, even in a modal or something, boom, you just throw it in wherever you want, and it should handle itself. So let's give it a sec. Boom, I think it's trying to render right here somewhere. But to the point of putting in the breadcrumbs or near the breadcrumbs component, boom, it's right here. Like we can just plug and play it wherever we need it. And then we have that same component. If we want it on the Kanban page, we have this like projects page even, right? Or we should have this projects page. Let's see. So I'm still so concerned on why. That's us checking the reactivity, but I'm still wondering why the base percentage thing wasn't working. Point being though, that's what we want to treat our columns like ultimately. Is just like this, where wherever we plop them, they become their own thing. Base test table. Okay, use effect. Got it. Okay, so it is because we have some of these being on client versus server side. So let's see. Boom. So when the components are built out where the data is handled within the component instead of the page, now we're just kind of playing Legos. Like now after we build the Lego, like it takes time. We choose the color. We're like, do we have like 4 dots on the Lego? Do we have like 8 dots on the Lego? What type of Lego is it, right? But then after we get it figured out, you now have access to that Lego. In theory, I don't know what's going on with this base project percentage, but in theory, we should have access to that Lego wherever we want to use it. So that's kind of the idea. I really want to understand why this isn't working. Sorry, we're getting a little off track of the column additional component, but I do want to learn more about Vue about Next as much as I can, because understanding these subtleties and stuff I think is important, especially dealing with the DOM and just all of this stuff. So I don't know why that wouldn't be working. Base project percentage, right? I feel like it really should still be working. Unless on the dashboard page we did something specific around it, which I don't think we did. It looks like we just popped it in there. So maybe I'll just quickly do this and see if that fixes the problem, and then we'll get back to what we need to do. Oh, and maybe it does. Maybe it does fix the problem. Boom, there it is. So in theory, I guess maybe I can expand on that component a little bit more and wrap the actual base percentage component with something like this. I I think because we didn't have a flex around it, it was causing some sort of issue. So if I guess we could pass in a name for it. We could pass in this h2 as well, put it in the component. I'll show you guys what that might look like. If we pop over to base project percentage, so that would just look like wrapping all this stuff with this. Or we could say, oh, and we have an extra div, it looks like, for no reason. It's 1/4. Not sure why we had that, right? Seemed like it was unnecessary. Okay, so let me delete that out here, and boom. But basically we would just take all of this and boom, wrap it here. And even in project completion, we can pass in a prop that now says like title or something, right? Title text. And if there isn't one, then just default it to project completion. And it's throwing a red underline because we don't have that prop coming in. So, but now we do. So I can use that, right? So if we want to, and I guess I can make it conditional so it's not throwing errors everywhere, in other places, but let's say now we actually don't need all of this. And I'm gonna revert all these changes because I don't like doing margin top stuff with the child. I like the parent to control the child. New title, boom. So now in theory, it should work identical to now if we're in our Kanban page. We don't need all this extra jazz. We can now just pop in our base project completed, project percentage component, and boom, it should populate here in a sec. Give it a sec to load, and boom, there it is. So obviously it's overlapping with some absolute values and things like that. So we could wrap it in a div, do class name relative, all that stuff. But let me undo some of those changes because I don't want the child to actually handle these issues. The teaching point out of that was hopefully to show you guys these components should be their own kind of thing, right? Where I guess I'll leave all of this. I just don't want this one here, margin top 8 or whatever. We'll leave it. It looks like that'll be fine. But the idea is we just want to have these data-driven components, especially the data ones, to be their own thing. Like it all plays nice on the same page, but again, for the reasons I mentioned, if we ever want to move stuff around, we ever need to reconstruct the application, we ever need, to let's say upper management says, hey, we want this changed, we want this, or you do A/B testing on 2 deployed versions of your application, and you realize version A, people are gravitating to this layout or this utility or this new function that you've added. Well, if all of your Lego bricks are really easily stackable and unstackable, it takes no time to make those adjustments. But if let's say these Lego bricks are dependent on something, like the state of them is dependent on the page, now you have to deal with the page every time you make a change or an adjustment. You're going to have to do these larger changes and adjustments. You're going to have to consider the data every time you do stuff. But it does help with reactivity when you do that. When you pass the data from the page into the components, the reactivity is 1-to-1. You don't have to worry about reactivity. The problem then becomes when they're self-contained components, you now need them to somehow know about these other components, even though their data is self-contained. And that's the tricky part. So that's the challenge we were facing on the reactivity of these columns. And I'm sure there's an easy way I'm just overlooking, but fundamentally that's the nature of that issue. So let's remove that. That's just a tangential teaching point, but let's get back to what we want to do. So we want to think about these endpoints, these task column endpoints, and I'm wondering if we want to just include them in the task store, because it's all relevant to the task, right? In other words, I feel it's unnecessary to build a task column store when we could just have a task store still in general. So we do want to think about that, which I think that's how to do it, is just keep them all in the same store. The next thing we need to think about is how do we do it with the endpoints, right? Because these are going to be associated to a user. These columns inevitably will. But I think this will actually all handle it here. So we can have a GET request for GET tasks. Maybe we want to build a different endpoint though. Instead of tasks, those are separate from task columns. So I think it feels appropriate to make a new task columns API, right? But I don't want to make a different store for task columns. I think just keep it all, put all the APIs that are associated to task in the task store. So whenever we need to call them, boom, they're there. Whenever we need to call the endpoints, not whenever we need to call them. That's not what I meant. Whenever we need to call the endpoints, they're all in the task store. And if we need to call the column, then we can also do that too. So let's build for that. Then I think steal this over. We're going to have we're going to instantiate our Prisma client, of course, and we're not going to need get task. We're going to need to not update columns. We'll just have add and delete columns. I really don't want to update them. I feel like that's a little bit unnecessary if you have the wrong column. Maybe we can have an update column. But okay, before doing that, let's just unpack it all. And we'll start here with just get task columns. I think is a good start. Get task columns. And I guess we don't really need to do very much here. We can just do prisma.task columns, find them. We don't need to include task status. We just need to find them. That's it. And just send them up. And we actually can just name them task columns instead of task. So, and this is not user not created. So we'll need to edit all of our error messages at some point. We'll have a day for that, but not today. I will say task column not found. Task columns not found. And that would be under the condition that we couldn't fetch them for some reason. So I think that'll work for that endpoint. Let's build a post task column endpoint. Post task column endpoint. So we have our task column. In our rec.body, we want to receive const, we'll say task column name, I believe it was. Rec.body. Did we spell that right? Task column. No, we want task column. So, okay, task column name, and we are going to create one. And data, we want task column name to be task column name. I believe that's what we called it in Prisma. Task columns name. Okay, we're going to rename that task column ID and task columns name. So we need to regenerate the contract as well, because we just made a change to Prisma. So that should do that. And boom. We should have no problems here. So task column name, that should be the thing that we post to our columns. Let's give it a sec to update. Do you need to do longhand syntax in Prisma? Is that why? Task columns name is not assignable to... What do you mean? What do you mean? Let's get rid of the crypto for the UUIDs that we were generating. Let's see. Expected data comes on the type. I thought that's exactly what we named it. No, was it something else? Task column name, right? Oh, and of course the ID. Is that why? But I thought that was generated, right? Wouldn't that be db.objectID, right? Wouldn't that handle it? Whenever a task column name was generated, doesn't MongoDB handle that? Boom, I think now it will. Okay, perfect. So that, oh, maybe not. Okay, well then we will handle it. That's completely fine. Let's import that crypto back here. Let's get that back in here, crypto from crypto, and we will say task column ID, what was it? Crypto.uuid, I believe. Random UUID. Boom. I think that solves our issue. And res.send task columns, we will say it's actually task column that we want to generate, not task columns for each individual one, right? Let's add it to our router. So case post. And in the post request, boom, we need post task columns. So I think that handles our two cases here of just fetching them or querying for them and then adding to them. We'll build for the what's it called, the deletion and maybe the update in a sec. But let's see if these work right now. So we have all of this async, boom, 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 status, update, all this stuff. We actually want to do get task columns. And we will await, it's going to be a GET request from that same endpoint. It won't be this. We'll actually not send anything back, I believe. For the GET task columns, we're actually just going to do this. And we need to add a piece of state called const task columns. And set task columns will pull, not task columns. We'll pull this state from the store, and this is what we'll distribute across our application. So we will set the response.data to this. We don't need to get the task when we get the columns. We're already handling that somewhere else. We don't really want to do task state quite yet. I'm going to get rid of the timeout. We might, if we want to do loaders and stuff like that, we can handle that for our columns, but I don't want to get too technical with them right now. Let's just see if we can make them work right from a database standpoint. So we don't want to pass in task ID. We don't want all that stuff. We just want to get them. Had to double check our task or our get function earlier. Let's say function post task columns. Let's go ahead and build this one out. This is where we want our task column name that we're going to be receiving. And we're going to get the string as well. Don't need that. Let's do a try catch again. And we're not going to do a GET request. This is going to be an Axios post request. Oh, boom. I completely forgot to configure this part. This is where we're going to go to API on both of these endpoints. We have a different API for these. So it's going to be, instead of API/tasks, it's going to be API/task-columns. Yeah. So precision in software engineering is very important, right? Being very, very precise is the name of the game. So task column won't work. We need columns, because that's exactly what we named our endpoint. Task columns. So boom, we're setting the columns here to that response. And let's do it here too. Task-columns. Perfect. And we have our post request. We also want to send this with a payload of task column name. So that payload will get sent to the backend, and then the backend is when we're saying rec.body. When we go to here. So here's our front end store. Let me close out of Prisma. We don't need that right now. So when we pass in the task column name and pop it into the payload here, that's what this is. When it's saying rec.body, it's coming from the request body. This is the request body right here. And we're just destructuring it here and saying, okay, we're pulling that in and passing it into our database. So I've also always wondered this in development. Why is this just not allowed to be on the front end, like right here? You know what I mean? Like wouldn't that be one less abstraction if we could just literally pop it in right here? I'm just saying, folks, we should probably all figure out how to do that. Can we? Can we just pop in Prisma right here? Actually, do we even need to do Axios? That would be amazing. Thinking about it, that would be amazing. Let's see. Import. What is it? Prisma client, or is it Prisma? What is it at the top? Prisma client. Okay, Prisma client, and then we say const Prisma equals Prisma client or new Prisma client. Boom. If that works, then we don't even need to do all this. Actually, we could just handle everything in the task store, which would be pretty cool, to be honest. Might get a little verbose. Then I would feel okay about doing task columns and task cards and breaking them apart. So it's a little separation of concerns. But I guess the only thing here is how would you do a response.send task column? How would you do something like that? I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. Let's see if there's this out in the world. This is my front end store. Is it possible to do backend operations in a store? Let's see. It says there's a bit of front end and back end logic. The res.send seems like an attempt to respond to the backend client, which is typically done on the backend side, which it is. Res.data seems to be, I don't know. I think that would be an awesome thing. I don't know how that would be done, but I feel like it's possible. I feel like that's possible. And then we have an additional less layer of abstraction. If we can just handle all of our database interactions in the store. You know what I mean? Then because this is kind of just like a auxiliary place. The store is. It's like an auxiliary place to compile data and information and payloads that sends it to the backend. But if we're already compiling it here, why can't we just send it here too? So I don't know. Maybe I'll look into it. Maybe I'll look into Prisma a little more to see if that's doable. But maybe not right now. We'll just keep it simple. So let's post columns.data. I don't think we need to set the columns here when we post. I believe when we post task, we can just post the thing. Okay, so I don't think I need to await the response either. When we post, right? Where's the post again? Post, boom. Or excuse me, I don't think we need to declare a variable. We still need to await, of course. Okay, so I think that'll work as far as wiring up the functionality goes to the server side of things and to the database. But let's see if we can get our modal now handling this stuff. So this add column functionality isn't going to be where we do this anymore. We need this to post to the backend store, and we need to pull in the state. import the task store, I should say. Oh, we already are. That's right. Here it is. Say columns task store equals task store, and we'll just invoke it. And we want the task store to be this thing that we instantiate on load. And I guess maybe that would make sense if we're already triggering the columns here to then maybe fetch the task. Maybe that would handle our reactivity issue here as well. But again, maybe not. Maybe this is good that it's a separation of concerns. This handles the columns. The base columns themselves handle the tasks. That does seem like an appropriate separation of concerns. So I'll just do this on load, and it'll be task store dot get columns, get task columns, right? So basically on load, boom, we'll get the task columns. And I guess on post as well, we need to refetch the task columns because it's going to post to the database. And then we need to query from the database as well. So, and then on page load, we need to query from the database. So let's think about this again. We won't need the column headers. We'll end up pulling those in from the task column. So boom, task column headers, or from the task store, excuse me. And what did we call it? We didn't call it, we just called it task columns, which we didn't export. We forgot to do that, or I forgot to do that rather. Not you guys are just watching. Boom, so task columns, task store.task columns. Not sure why it's undefined, okay. So I think we can just do this, right? Little question mark, or task columns, we can always do that as well. And then we don't have set task column headers anymore. That doesn't really exist. What it is going to end up being is task store, post task column, and we need to pass in the column name. So that's actually what the function will be for add column. And I guess we could still keep add column. If not, we can actually condense this and say task store here and do something like this. We can maybe get away with a ternary or say and right here. Would that work? I don't know. It might, folks. It might. And then we can clean up our function here. Don't need this, right? Now we're looking at less material here, but we'll see if that works. If not, I'll pull that function back out. This is just a guard clause. I know it looks a little bit convoluted. It's certainly not readable. So let's actually not do that. Let's just keep it simple. Because now that I think about it, we're going to go back to it at some point and be like, what is all this jazz? Let's just keep it simple. So task store.task columns is what we're going to map through here now. And we'll say column header still, or maybe we'll change it to task column just to keep it. Sorry, my buddy just texted me. That's so awesome. He said, do you want to do a project together? Absolutely, Angel. I would love to do a project with you. That'd be epic. Problem is the plate's full. You know what I mean? When you're doing projects and building this, doing the programming and studying for interviews and building the project for this other company, freaking full plate. But I would love to squeeze time in there. It's so many people. And I'm very, very fortunate. I love it when people, I've got a buddy Tredis like, dude, I need you to build this application with me. I love it. I feel so flattered, you know what I mean? And I have an amazing friend from Facebook who he's a good friend from high school and college, and he constantly says, he's like, we need to build something. You'd be the perfect guy to build something with. And we did actually start building an inventory management system together. Which, yeah, I feel like we should see all the way through, because we would build some good software, you know what I mean? So Let's dive back into this though. Let's focus. Let me focus. Add modal content. Boom. That's this. Add column. Okay. Let's make sure this is getting sent off to our store. Okay. So I'm gonna just, of course, do task column name here. Console log it. Make sure we're receiving it from the store. From store. Boom. Love doing that. And let's add a thing. Let's say new call or new co. So something seemed to have worked, but I feel like it shouldn't have worked. Because I didn't see it in the store. Yeah, I don't see it in the console either. So I wonder if the logic on the DOM wasn't updated quite yet, and it was still using the previous state and logic that was on the DOM already mounted. I'm sure it was. So let's refresh. Let's try one more time. See what we're dealing with here. Add column, perfect, because we don't have any columns now. So, and maybe we could also fire off a function just like on user's load, like fire off a first column of just, you can have the basic like to do column, hello, you know, like all those columns or whatever, to do, in progress, those things. So boom, from store, it is working. Okay, we just got a bad request. So it's sending off to the backend. Let's go to the backend now that we know it's working, or at least we're compiling the proper information in the store. Listen to a really sad song right now. It's the say something, I'm giving up on you. Just change the tone. It was all this pop instrumentals, and now it's a sad song, folks. Now it's a sad song. Okay, let's see what's going on here. I'm gonna pop open this, say test, boom. So it gets passed in here, Prisma columns. Are we pushing to the database? Let's see. Looks like it's coming in here. I don't see it coming into the database. So test. Does it have something to do with this? Do we need to make this to string? Test. Okay, so it's coming through. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we can get our console log out of our store. We know this is working. Maybe we can console log the response real quick to see if we're getting anything back for a response here at the very least. What is it? Okay, so the response is coming back 200, which is great. That means it's working. So let's think about it. It's not the front end here. Res.send task column. Let's go to our tasks API. Go to our post function. Let's look at it for a sec. Task create. Okay. Crypto ID. Maybe it has something to do with this one right here. So we can say task ID. We'll change to task column ID. Boom. Maybe that was it. Task column ID. Okay, let's see. Let's refresh. Crash the server, run it back again. Give it a sec. I'm gonna get a little bit of water. Folks, the curly hair is just curling. Okay, what's going on here? Come on, server. It's compiling. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so add column. Let's go ahead and try to add a column. Test, boom, add new column. What do we get back in return? Let's see, response, oh, not Command U, forgive me. So we got a bad request, internal server error 500. All of this, I think this is from the base modal. This right here, the component changing when uncontrolled. Let's see, I think that's, base modal, at base modal. Okay, so that's that problem I was referencing earlier about the buttons and how we had to work around instead of passing a button in. It was liking that. It's still not liking our solution. So let's ignore this warning. Not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about this post. API/task columns. Localhost API/task columns. Is that not? We know it's the right API because it's going to that function. And how do we do it on the other ones? API/tasks, right? We just did API. Depending on the parameters, if we wanted to do, an individual task, right? So, Prisma.create task columns. We haven't leaned on ChatGPT today. So what are we going to do? We're going to take this and pass it to Chat. See what Chat thinks. Let's pull up in our Prisma schema. Here is my Prisma schema. Why is my endpoint not posting a column? Let's try. Boom. Here, boom. Looks like you're trying to create a new task column by using your endpoint, but you're encountering an issue where the column is not being created. Let's go through some possible steps and troubleshoot. Check the endpoint configuration. The endpoint URL might need to match the post. Okay, but we checked all of that. Error handling, logging, and debugging, post task columns. Error handling with the crypto random UID. Okay, let's try that one. Should pull up just a big old, maybe that's what it is, because did we do id.map into database object ID? Is that what we added as well? I'll give that a go. Error handling, let's see, Prisma client configuration. Verify that your Prisma client is set up as task columns. Oh, maybe that's what we did there is had an error. The await should be used on the function call. So in the task store, let's just double check, making sure we're awaiting that, which we are awaiting the post. I know we kept it, I remember. Okay, we'll even throw an await here. Let's npx run generate. We don't really need that second await, but tomato. Let's close that, close this. Let's see what the IntelliSense does again when we say const, or let's say Prisma dot task column. So these are all of our models right here from Prisma. The IntelliSense already populates every choice that we have. So we know it's not that issue. And if we go here, we still have a create choice. Boom. And we just add the data. Not data L. The data is taking an L right now. And then if we do control space, we can see all of our Prisma content of what it needs. So it needs these two things, task column and task column name, which is exactly what we have here. Task column, and the reason why it's not allowing us to do it is because we've already used it here. So if I delete it and hit control spacebar, task column ID pops up, right? Task column name. So I think we're all squared away on the subtle syntax. Maybe I'll change this to a JSON, res.json. I feel like that really shouldn't do it, but let's let's try. Let's try. Test, okay. We got a UUID and an error 500. Why? I wonder if maybe Mongo ran out of like free tier memory or something. Potentially. I have been getting emails for that, but I feel like that's a really, really, really small thing, right? Task columns. Yeah, I feel like it wouldn't do that, right? So let's drop the table. Or maybe we do need the table. Maybe that's why. Test, let's see. We got a new ID, so it's a new column, or should be, in theory. So it's an internal server error. Why? Our route is there. Gosh, you think you catch lightning, and then all of a sudden you go from Zeus to like the guy who rubs his feet on the carpet. It's like, I'm a lightning bolt. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's think. We got the Prisma status, boom, send, task column. I don't think it's coming from the query. Let's take that out of the post request for now. Let's just make it solely a post request. So we're passing the payload, right? And let's just double check, but we know it's going back there. So we're not having issues with this. I think the store is configured because we know it's receiving the task column name that we type in. So we know everything is proper there, right? Let's just kind of double check. Backend payload. So if this is here from front end, that confirms that our store is working from here. And it's confirming that our API path is working. So it is from backend payload. So we know that the column name is coming in proper. We're getting some sort of internal error still. Just a simple post request. That's all we're doing, folks. Just a simple post request. So I wonder if we don't pass in with a column ID. Let's try this, right? It's npx prisma run generate. Let's update that. But I think in the task, we always post with an ID, do we? Prisma task, fine. Where's our create? Yep, we do have a task ID. So let's try then with the task or with the column ID. Because that would just be such an amazing piece of functionality that your user can create the columns that they need. Because there should be a column or a space. Oh, and we kind of do need a backlog space as well for the task to exist. But in virtue of this, it can basically be a column and we can just utilize it on the front end and put it somewhere else if the column's named backlog. So I have ideas that we actually don't need to add an additional data storage for backlog. We can just mirror it as one of the columns and just repurpose that column labeled as backlog somewhere else, which would be a bit cheeky. From here, we are receiving the payload. Okay. Objects are not valid as React child task column. Okay, here's where we go. Here's where we go. Or here's where we go, right? Unhandled runtime errors. So it looks like we're now getting a column back and it's trying to post it on here, but it's having an issue. So let's comment that out. Let's see if our database received the column. Oh, perfect. And it did. So now we're dealing with a different issue. Maybe it's going to be a key issue where we still have to put in a key, which will end up being the column index. So I think that could be one of the issues here, potentially. Let's read it one more time. Objects are not valid as a React child. Found objects with keys, task column ID, task column name. You meant to render a collection of children. Use an array instead. I thought this was an array, right? So now it sounds like in our store, we are maybe posting them as a let's see, as a response data set task columns. Should be an array, right? Oh, and I guess we can actually pull in the type task columns for this instead of string. So we're getting type safe here. Perfect. And we're going to have an error here, task column, right? So this is task column headers not assignable as string. But what it is going to be assignable as, I believe, is something like this, right? Okay, let's think about this error. Well, it's good that we're at least posting to the database. That's proper. So let's handle this error, and then I think wrap it up for today's episode. What a lovely arc of events, right? Starting with housing, caught some wind in the sails, and then we had a little debugging. So what a fruitful episode, one might say. Okay, so objects are not valid as a React child. Let me just think for a second what this kind of means. Found objects with keys, task column ID, and task column name. You meant to render a collection of children instead. So what is task stored at task columns then? What is that? What is that? Let's figure that one out. I think that's going to be I think the solution to our problem, or at least the breadcrumb, the trail to our problem. So we're getting a task column. Oh, nice. Okay. I see. I think I'm passing in now the base column. Okay. I see. I think this is a simple issue, guys. So we'd say task column. And let's just go ahead and render task column here. But we want to say task column name now. Dot task column name, right? Or the ID. Let's see if that works. Boom, from here. So that is our task column. And I think that's the error that was happening here was we just needed to specify the column header. And yeah, so let's build for that real quick. So column header is actually going to be task column name, and column index can actually still just be column index. So let's see if that should load, right? Boom, from here. Folks, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see if that works. So I think we did post it, but we need to now add that requery function back after a post is successful. We need to get task columns. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me refresh. Let's see. So pretty cool. And let's test. Boom, add new column. And it added it, as you saw. So that is working great, and it's custom to the user. Now we want to, well, I guess we could wrap it up here. Yeah, let's wrap it up here. I think this is an appropriate stopping point. We got the posting functionality done and the querying functionality completed, and I think on the burner for the next episode is we want to add the delete. I think. Do we want to update the name? I guess that's not a huge deal, but we still can, obviously. And additionally, we need to get these column names here for the status, right? Or maybe we can change the status or task status to like task position, which column it's technically in. Might be a better fitting thing. But yeah, some of these things are starting to unfold and reveal themselves to us, the best solutions, the ways to approach these things. And yeah, I think it's just baby steps. It's just we're walking down the line and checking out each baby step. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like how I produce software and build things, I have my software engineering program in the description below. It's a teachable link. As well, I'm giving out some of the material for free on the channel, of course. Obviously, this is a ton of free content here as well, and hopefully seeing that pair programming style of learning of, hey, here's how I'm handling a bug, and here's my thoughts on this thing, and where do I go next. So I hope it's fruitful. I hope you guys are learning, and again, if you've made it this far, I really, really, really appreciate you watching. Pags from the Code Chronicles. I am going to eat some food. So cheers. Thank you guys.